He looked me dead in the eye, that familiar, condescending smirk plastered across his face, the one he always wore when he knew he was about to deliver a cruel line he'd rehearsed a dozen times. The wine glass, a ridiculously expensive crystal piece that cost more than my entire week's groceries, was held aloft, catching the warm dining room light. The entire extended family, a sea of judgmental faces I only saw twice a year, was waiting, already primed for the laugh. To family, he declared, his voice booming and theatrical, and to the simple truth that some kids make you proud. They build careers, they buy houses, they achieve, and others. He paused, his gaze sweeping over me like I was a speck of dirt, others just take up space. The ensuing laughter was immediate, sharp, and felt like a physical punch. My Aunt Clara let out her distinctive, high-pitched cackle. Even my mother, God bless her tired soul, offered a weak, nervous giggle, hoping to somehow diffuse the tension by participating. They all laughed not just at the joke, but at *me*. They always did, but this time, something fundamental in me shifted. I felt the heat rising in my chest, not the flush of embarrassment, but the cold, focused fire of absolute resolve. Was I wrong for the way I reacted? Was the nuclear option I chose a necessary act of self-preservation, or did I simply stoop to his level? Tell me honestly, would you have swallowed that humiliation, or would you have burned the whole table down? I guess to understand why that particular jab, out of all the thousands over the years, was the one that finally broke me, you have to know a little bit about what my life was like growing up as the other son. My older brother, Mark, was the golden boy, the prodigy, the blueprint for my father's idea of a perfect human. He was the classic overachiever, high school valedictorian, Ivy League degree, a six-figure job straight out of college, married to a literal doctor, and had two picture-perfect kids they named after my father's own parents. He was the sun, and I was the satellite that kept spinning further and further out of orbit. I was 3 years younger, quieter, more creative, and hopelessly, completely different. Where Mark played baseball, I wrote poetry. Where Mark studied finance, I studied film. Where Mark bought a McMansion in the suburbs, I lived in a tiny, rented studio apartment, spending my evenings on freelance video editing jobs and trying to get my own short films off the ground. My father, a man who built a very successful, very corporate logistics company from the ground up, saw anything that wasn't scalable or profitable as a failure. Art was a hobby, not a career. My entire existence was a passive-aggressive lecture about fiscal responsibility and the shame of not maximizing my potential. Every interaction, every family dinner, every holiday gathering was an awards ceremony for Mark and a public roasting for me. The day of the dinner, which was a pre-Christmas affair, had already been a minefield. Mark had just been promoted to a senior VP role, and the conversation for 2 straight hours had revolved entirely around his new company car, the stock options he received, and how his son, little 4-year-old Thomas, had shown an exceptional aptitude for complex calculus, according to Mark, which, totally believable. I sat there, trying to contribute to a story about a cool editing project I'd landed a documentary for a local historical society. But every time I opened my mouth, I was either talked over or met with a dismissive, "That's nice, dear," from an aunt, or a direct jab from my father. "Still playing around with those movie clips, are we?" He'd ask, never missing an opportunity to belittle my passion. The taking up space comment wasn't just a dig. It was the summation of decades of his disapproval, delivered in front of the people whose respect I craved, even though I knew I shouldn't. It was the absolute, final declaration that I was, in his eyes, a useless, expensive mistake. It was the last straw for my soul. I took a sip of my water, a deliberate, slow movement to buy myself time to compose the response. The laughter in the room started to die down, the family waiting for me to blush, stammer, and retreat, as I always did. They waited for me to make myself smaller, to confirm the truth of his words, but this time I didn't. I put the glass down on the polished mahogany table with a soft asterisk clink asterisk that sounded deafeningly loud in the sudden, expectant silence. I looked at my father, whose face was still alight with the triumph of his cruelty, and I gave him a slow, genuine smile. The kind that doesn't reach the eyes, the kind that promises a reckoning. I could feel every single person in that room watching me. Mark, bless his clueless heart, actually looked mildly uncomfortable, probably because I was ruining his spotlight moment. My mother's eyes were wide, silently pleading with me to let it go, to not make a scene, to keep the peace we'd all paid for with our own emotional sacrifice. But I was done paying. I cleared my throat, not loudly, but enough to make sure every ear was tuned in. "That's actually a great toast, Dad," I began, my voice perfectly level and calm, which was unnerving in itself. A truly insightful observation. Some people do just take up space. I let the implication hang there for a second, letting him assume I was agreeing with him, agreeing with his assessment of me. His triumphant look deepened. He'd won. That was his first mistake. Before I tell you exactly what I said next, the thing that ended the yearly family dinners as we knew them and fundamentally changed my relationship with every single person in that room, I need you to understand something crucial. For years, I had been the family's secret keeper. My father, the successful, ethical businessman, was actually a master manipulator who skirted tax laws and once fired a loyal 20-year employee for refusing to cover up a mistake that was my father's fault. My brother, Mark, the perfect husband, had been cheating on his wife, the doctor, with his executive assistant for nearly 6 months, and I had accidentally seen the texts on his phone during a previous visit. And my Aunt Clara, the one who cackled the loudest, was constantly lying about her finances, secretly taking out loans against her retirement fund while publicly bragging about her lavish vacations. They were all standing on pedestals built on carefully curated lies, and I, the space, Dacre, was the only one who knew the location of the foundational cracks. So I had a choice to make in that moment: continue to be the family punching bag, or use the ammunition I'd unintentionally collected over the years and shatter the fragile, toxic illusion they all lived in. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice: self-immolation or mutually assured destruction. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause this video and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have dropped the bombs, or would you have kept their secrets and just walked away quietly? Now let's get back to the fireworks. I maintained that calm, unsettling smile and continued. "Good thing I just got my own place," I said, leaning back slightly in my chair. The phrase was innocuous enough, but the delivery made the air thick with anticipation. My father squinted at me, sensing the script had gone off the rails, but he couldn't stop the inevitable punchline. "A bigger studio, I assume," he sneered. "No, Dad. Actually, it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo, closed on it last week." A murmur went through the room. My mother looked genuinely surprised and happy for a split second before the cloud of confusion returned. "Where did you get the money?" my father demanded, instantly moving to the core issue, the perceived failure of my finances. I simply shrugged. Turns out the documentary I edited for the Historical Society was a huge hit, got picked up by a streaming service, and my contract included a fairly substantial back-end percentage, plus a fat check for editing the series they immediately commissioned. I paused, letting the implications sink in. Money from my art money they had all dismissed. I took another breath, and this was where I delivered the true coup de grace, the line I'd been composing in my head since he raised that crystal glass. My voice never wavered, never got loud. It was just a simple, conversational statement delivered to the entire table. "And it's 3-0. 0 miles away in Seattle. I leave next Tuesday. The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a snowflake melt. Every single eye was glued to me. Mark's jaw had actually gone slack. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's triumphant face had gone completely blank, the color draining from his cheeks, replaced by a mottled, angry red. He opened his mouth, probably to demand an explanation, to tell me I was being ridiculous, but I didn't let him. I didn't want to leave a single syllable of his toxic energy in my new life. I spoke over him, still smiling sweetly. "So, Dad, about your toast," I said, meeting his now furious gaze. "You're absolutely right. Some kids make you proud and others just take up space, and I'm happy to report that after next week, *I* won't be taking up your space anymore. The funny thing about that condo, though, it's completely paid off, no mortgage. Turns out a niche documentary can actually make you quite a bit of cash when the production company gets bought out unexpectedly, which, by the way, is a much cleaner way to make money than, say, aggressively exploiting tax loopholes for your logistics business, the kind you were discussing with your accountant last week, the one that makes you so nervous about the upcoming audit, Mark." The gasp that ripped through the room was like a collective punch to the air. Mark went white. My father looked like I'd slapped him. "I heard you talking about it on a conference call once, Dad," I continued, just to twist the knife a little deeper into the illusion. "You leave your phone on speaker a lot. Maybe don't have those conversations around the space. Takers, we tend to notice things." I then turned my attention to Mark, whose face was a study in pure, unadulterated panic. His wife, the doctor, was staring at him, her eyes narrowing into dangerous slits. "Oh, and speaking of not noticing things, Mark," I added, leaning forward conspiratorially, "I hope you enjoy your new company car. Maybe you should take Sarah for a drive in it sometime, your executive assistant, I mean. Or maybe I should just tell Susan, your actual wife, about all those late nights you've been having. Just a thought." The finality of that statement settled over the table like a shroud. Susan, Mark's wife, slowly pushed her chair back, the harsh scrape on the wooden floor sounding like a gunshot. Then, just as Aunt Clara started to sputter some defensive nonsense, I cut her off too, not even looking at her. "And Aunt Clara, I'm glad to see you're still enjoying your trips to the Riviera. I just hope you can pay back those 3 separate payday loans you took out last month before the interest rate eats up your entire retirement fund. The bank notices those things too, by the way." I didn't wait for a response. There were no defenses left, only shock and absolute exposed fury. I pushed my own chair back and stood up, reaching for the small duffel bag I'd placed discreetly by my feet. I threw my napkin onto the table, right over the plate that held a half-eaten piece of dry turkey. My father, finally finding his voice, managed a choked, "You little bastard. You think you can just..." I looked down at him, my face finally losing the strained smile and becoming completely neutral. "I don't think, Dad, I do asterisk." I walked past the shocked faces, including my mother, who was silently weeping into her hands the collateral damage of my necessary act. I walked to the front door, pausing with my hand on the knob, and turned back to address the frozen tableau one last time. "Don't worry," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the ruined dining room. "You'll never have to worry about me taking up your precious space again. I'm moving on to make my own space on my own terms with my own money. I hope your perfect little lives work out for you. All those cracks are showing, though. Enjoy the holidays." And with that, I opened the door, stepped out into the cold night air, and closed the door gently behind me, sealing them inside the beautiful, expensive, and finally, utterly shattered prison of their own making. The aftermath was exactly what I had intended. That dinner was the last time the extended family gathered for any occasion. Mark's marriage imploded a week later, His wife filed for divorce and took everything. My father's company was hit with a massive audit, not because of what I said, but because the nervousness I alluded to was real, and his accountant had quietly been covering up his mistakes for years. He lost a considerable amount of money and had to pay massive penalties. Aunt Clara's financial house of cards collapsed shortly after, leading to a desperate, tearful call to my mother, who, for the first time, actually stood up for me and hung up on her sister. My mother and I still talk, thankfully. She was never the problem, just a casualty of a toxic marriage. She eventually left my father a few months later. I got a long, furious, and frankly pathetic email from my father demanding an apology and telling me I had destroyed the family. I never responded. I blocked his number, his email, and Mark's too. I'm in Seattle now. The condo is amazing. The Film Commission here is a fantastic resource, and my career is finally taking off without the constant, draining weight of their disapproval. Sometimes, to grow, you have to cut the vine entirely, even if the plant is technically your own family tree. It was a cruel thing I did, but it was also the only way to save myself. I made my peace with that the moment I walked out the door. The peace I have now is priceless, so here's my closing thought. Never let someone else define your worth based on their own narrow, self-serving metric of success. If they are willing to humiliate you in public, you are not obligated to protect their secrets or their image. You are only obligated to protect your own peace and dignity, like this video if you were on my side in this family war. Subscribe to my channel for more real, raw stories of people fighting back and reclaiming their lives. And tell me in the comments section, do you think I was right to drop all the truth bombs at once, or should I have just walked away quietly? I'll see you all in the next story.